Welcome back to session 4, our final session in the Back in My Body series. And in this session, we will be exploring what it could mean to move from a place of love and reverence for our bodies, rather than perhaps punishment or disconnection. So if you don't feel totally connected to your body right now, if you don't feel even that you really love your body, that's okay. You don't have to. That's not a prerequisite for attending this class. But what I do invite you is to simply explore what that might feel like. What could it feel like? What would that look like? And maybe just beginning from this place of exploration. So with that, I invite you to find a shape of choice to begin our practice in. I'll be beginning in child shape, Balasana. However, you can begin in any shape that feels welcome to you. And if you do want to join me in beginning in child's shape, then there's a couple different ways you could come into it. You might have a blanket underneath your knees, just for comfort, especially if the floor beneath you is very hard. You might not need it if you're on carpet or something softer. And you might decide to have a second blanket specifically for wrapping around your back and your hips, just to provide a sense of covering and safety. This is optional, but it's something that you might choose to work with. And here, you could decide to take your knees a little bit wider, and you might have your toes touching back behind you. It would kind of look like you're making like a V pattern. And then you might begin to send your hips back toward the heels. The hips don't have to touch the heels, but you might send them in that direction. And you might extend the hands out and place the forehead on the floor, allowing your arms to rest, allowing the forehead to rest. Or if it doesn't feel safe or welcome to have your forehead on the mat, you could stack your fists on top of one another and rest your forehead on your fists. You could also utilize a block, resting your forehead on the block, bringing your elbows to the earth. And of course, the legs don't have to be separated so much if you don't want them to be. If you would like the legs, the knees a little bit closer together, you can. And there's really no right or wrong. It's completely whatever you decide feels best in your body in this moment. It might feel welcome to allow the knees to separate a bit more, creating a bit more room for your abdomen as you come down. Or if you'd like the legs a little bit more together, that's also a choice. So, lots of options here. You might walk the hands out, you might stack the fists, you might utilize a block. Or you might choose a completely different shape if you prefer that. You might even stay seated or anything else. And as we come into this beginning shape of choice, knowing that it is your choice, everything in this class is your choice. Everything in this class is an invitation. You reserve the right to accept or decline anything, any invitation in this class, without needing to justify it or ask permission. You are always in control of your practice. And I invite you to continue to rest here in your beginning shape as I offer you a poem for contemplation for this practice. And it's by Cleo Wade, and it's titled A Love Note to My Body. Cleo Wade writes, a love note to my body. First of all, I want to say thank you for the heart you kept beating even when it was broken, for every answer you gave me in my gut, for loving me back even when I didn't know how to love you, for every time you recovered when I pushed you past our limits, for today, for waking up. Maybe it doesn't feel like there's much to say thank you for to your body right now. And if so, that's okay. Or maybe you do find maybe one thing that you could express some gratitude for your body. Perhaps that one thing could be your ability to show up on your mat and move your body. And as we begin to move in this session today, my hope for you and kind of the affirmation for this session is, may this movement be a love note to my body. May I move from a place of love. May I move from a place of reverence and sacred sight, recognizing my body as home. May I move from a place of love. May I move from a place of reverence and sacred sight, recognizing my body as home. And with that, I welcome you to perhaps take a breath into this affirmation, this intention. May I move from a place of love. May I move from a place of sacred sight, recognizing my body as home. And you might decide to stay here in this shape of choice for as long as you want, perhaps even the whole class. Or if you would like to add some movement into your body, you might begin to find your way into a child's shape if you aren't already. And option here, we have two options. Option one, if you would prefer to keep your hips a bit more grounded, maybe having the blanket wrapping around your hips, you could explore planting your elbows on the mat, maybe even allowing your fingers and your hands to stretch out wide, taking up space. And you could begin to find this cat-cow, this alternative cat-cow movement as you breathe in, drawing the heart space forward, maybe even taking your gaze forward. And as you exhale, you could begin to round through the shoulders, round through the heart, opening up the shoulder blades, and continuing to rock back and forth at your own pace, breathing in and opening up. Exhaling to curl in and open the back body. This is option one. Option two is to begin to inhale and shift the hips forward. You might even need to walk your hands forward if they were in really close into our cat shape. And then as you exhale, you might begin to kind of flow backward, sending the hips back toward the heels as your hands stay rooted to the floor and your heart space could open. Finding this wave-like motion as you breathe in, shift yourself forward into cat. Exhale. Open up through the spine. Shift your hips back toward your heels. So 2 choices here. The third choice always being whatever you want it to be. If neither of these options suit you in this moment, you can choose your own movement or stillness. And whatever you decide is honored. You know your body best. You know what you need. I invite you to be here for the next 3 rounds of breath in whatever you have chosen for yourself. May I move from a place of love. Love for my body. And if I don't love my body right now, might I ask myself what it could feel like to love my body? What could it feel like and look like to move from a place of reverence and sacred sight? And as you begin to finish your last breath here, you might begin to settle back into a child's shape of your choice. Either you keep your gaze lifted or you rest your forehead, whatever you decide. Perhaps feeling your breath moving in and out. Observing if there's any subtle effects from this practice so far. Just simply moving the spine, moving the body in tandem with your breath. What do you feel? And with your next inhale, if you're ready for more movement, you might begin to lift the head if it's not already, and shift yourself forward. I'll meet you in a tabletop. And 2 options here, or rather 3, really. You might begin to find a downward facing dog, and what that could look like is you might decide to walk your hands forward just a little bit if they were directly underneath your shoulders, just to create a little bit of space, although you don't have to if you'd prefer a shorter stance. And tucking the toes, if you'd like to join me for down dog, this is option 1. You might begin to inhale and begin to lift the knees and shift the hips back, like you're really extending through the arms and the shoulders. And here, you might decide to keep the feet hip distance apart, or you could decide to take the feet as wide as the mat, creating a wider stance. This just gives us a little bit more room for those moments that we want it. And you could decide to begin releasing one heel at a time toward your mat, kind of like you're pedaling a bike. Stretching one leg at a time. This is a choice here, or you might find stillness. Releasing both heels down toward the mat. Option 1, down dog. Option 2 is to have your knees planted to the earth and walking your hands forward and engaging your core at half strength. This is just to support the lower back. Especially if you have any tenderness in your lower back, you'll want to engage your core at half strength or explore that. And you could walk your hands really far forward and allow the heart and the head to come down toward the mat. The chest doesn't have to touch the mat, and it probably won't, especially if you're engaging your core a little bit. And that's okay. It's not really the goal. It's not the point. But if you want to, you could rest your forehead on the mat, so that your neck isn't straining if it feels like it is. This is our puppy shape. The third option is always to return to a child's shape at any time. So whatever you decide, I invite you to explore this for the next 2 to 3 rounds of breath. There is no wrong choice. And you could also try one and then decide maybe you want to try the other. You can change your mind. You can try both if you want. As we take our last round of breath here. If you are in down dog, you might begin to release your knees down toward the mat if you feel complete. If you are in puppy shape, you might begin to shift your hips forward and walk your hands back. Or you might choose to stay in these shapes a little bit longer. Option to come up off of your hands if you would like to give your arms and hands a break, maybe rolling through the shoulders, rolling through the wrists. Those can be some really warming shapes. And if you're ready to come into our next shape, I'll meet you again in tabletop. I'm gonna move long ways on my mat because we'll be extending one leg at a time. And so if you know you'd like the grippiness of your mat, you might also turn long ways, but you don't have to. And coming into tabletop, I'm gonna start on my right side. However, you can start on any side that you want. And I'm gonna extend my right leg. Here it might be helpful to have some blocks nearby. So you could grab a block and place it on your left side. Or if you don't have a block, you could utilize a stool or stacked books, anything that can raise the ground to your hand. And we'll just kind of leave that there for a second. And you could choose to stay right here. You might begin to rock back and forth. Noticing that as you rock, it might change the sensation in your body. Observing with your extended leg, whether it's your right or your left. Are my toes facing straight forward? Are they open to the side? And if so, does my ankle feel stable? And might you adjust your foot according to how your body feels in this moment? I have my foot facing directly forward and the blade of my foot, the outer blade of my foot, connected to the earth, and that's what feels stable for me. But you can decide for yourself. Option to stay right here, maybe continuing to rock, or you might begin to walk your hands back toward you and find your way up. Beginning to find some stability here. And if your standing knee is feeling kind of tender, it might be helpful to have a blanket underneath your knee. And if you need more cushion, you could fold your blanket again. So like coming here if your knee needs it. Option 2, inhale and reach the arms right overhead. And as you do, I invite you to take up space. Can you lengthen through the arms, lengthen through the spine, feeling this length, this space, this tall reach, knowing that you are allowed to take up space. Option to exhale and bring your hand down toward your extended leg. So if that's your right leg, you might begin to reach toward your right leg. Option to take your top arm and lean it over in the same direction. Observing here any opening in the side of your body that's being opened. You could place your right hand on your right leg if that's the one that's extended. You could also use a block, placing it right in front of your leg where your hands can reach it. And we'll take one more breath here. Perhaps breathing directly into the side that is opening and receiving the stretch. Staying for the exhale. And you could choose to stay here longer. Or if you're ready, you could inhale and reach it all back up. Exhale to let the hands go. You might move your block to the other side. We'll just pause here in the middle. Maybe even placing your hands on your legs, feeling the engagement of your muscles. You might even squeeze the leg muscles a little bit with your hands, really tuning in to what's engaged, what's holding you up. And if you're ready to take the next shape, you could breathe in and lengthen up. With your exhale, option to bring your hand down toward your block or the floor. And you have 3 levels toward your block. You could have it up high. I have mine on high right now. You could also choose to place it on the middle or the lowest setting. You decide. And as you lengthen, if you are choosing to lengthen, you might create this really long line of energy from your fingertips all the way down toward your leg. Taking a breath in, perhaps even breathing from your fingertips all the way down into your leg, your foot that's planted on the floor. Option here to walk your block and your hand out, and you might decide to lift the leg that is extended. You could point your toes, you could flex your foot, or you might choose to leave your foot on the floor. This is half moon shape. You choose. And if you want this extended arm up toward the ceiling, you might even bring to your heart, or you might even bring to your leg, feeling your legs engage, feeling the leg create this long line of energy, whichever one you have lifted, if at all. As we take one more breath here. Option to release whenever you're ready. And if your leg was lifted, you could bring it back down to the earth. And you might decide to bring your hands down to the earth, coming around into a tabletop. Option 1, you might begin to find some intuitive, organic movement in tabletop, observing how your body feels after taking the shapes on one side. Or you might decide to simply find a child's shape, resting in stillness and tuning in here. Option to take 3 more rounds of breath wherever you are. May this movement or stillness that you have chosen be a love note to your body. May you move from a place of love. May you move from a place of reverence and sacred sight, seeing your body as the home that it is. And as we take our last breath here, I welcome you to decide if you'd like to continue moving or if you'd like to continue staying here in stillness. And if you would like to continue moving, you might begin to find your way into a tabletop if you aren't already. And option to extend the opposite leg that you did last time. And again here, you could simply begin by either pausing in stillness and noticing what does it feel to have one leg extended out, or you might rock back and forth, observing any change in sensation in your extended leg when you rock back compared to when you rock forward. One more breath in and out here, or you can stay as long as you like. And if you are ready to move on to the next shape, you might meet me in stillness and have a block on the same side extended leg. If you liked it there last time, you might enjoy having it there again this time. And you might begin to walk your hands back toward you and lift up. Taking a moment to adjust your stance as needed. So if the extended foot needs to be adjusted, or maybe you need more support underneath your standing knee, whatever it may be, go ahead and make adjustments. Feel the support in your body supporting you and you supporting your body. And if and when you are ready, you might decide to stay here or inhale and reach the arms up overhead, taking up space, lengthening as much or as little as you want. And as you exhale, you might begin to bring your hand down to your extended leg or even down to your block and reach the top arm over toward your extended leg. Or you might simply keep the top arm reaching up toward the ceiling. Two more rounds of breath here, 2 to 3, depending on your respiration rate. And you might even explore sending these breaths into your open ribs, the side of your body that is stretching and receiving and opening. Could you imagine the inhale going through your nose, down into your body, and directly into this open side of you? As we take our last breath here. And if you're ready, you might begin to inhale, come right back up to center. Maybe release the hands if you'd like. And we could move our block to the other side. Breathing in your own timing. Option to breathe out and bring your hand down toward your block or the floor, creating this strong line of energy all the way from your extended leg through your extended fingertips. You might notice your breath here as we are here for 2 more rounds of breath. Maybe your breath has changed. Maybe it's picked up. Maybe your heart rate has changed. Last breath. Option to stay here or leave. Or if you'd like to find a half moon shape, you might choose to lift your extended leg, hovering it over the mat. And option to extend your top arm, or you could always bring it to your heart Or you could also bring it to your extended leg, tuning into the muscles that are engaging, holding up your leg, doing the work. And your gaze could either look up toward the ceiling, straight ahead, or even down at your hand that is stabilizing you. Last breath. Breathing in, breathing out. And if you're ready to leave this shape, you might begin to bring your foot back down to the earth and come right back up. Perhaps bringing your hands to the floor, drawing your leg in. And again, option here to find intuitive movement, or you might choose to simply find your child shape. Five rounds of breath here. Making any adjustments needed. You might choose movement or stillness. Last 1 or 2 rounds of breath here. Breathing at your own pace. Observing your body. Knowing that you are your body. These sensations that happen inside of your body give us clues into how we're feeling and experiencing the world. And they are not right or wrong. They just simply are. You might choose to stay here in whatever shape you've chosen longer. Or if you're ready for the next shape, you might begin to find your way into a tabletop. Option here to extend one leg back behind you. Maybe it's your right leg. And you could tuck the toes and press through the heel, maybe rocking back and forward. Feeling your toes and your foot stretch. Maybe even as you press through the heel, you might feel it behind your knee or in your calf. And if you'd like, you could continue exploring this shape, this movement, or if you're ready, you might begin to inhale and begin to draw the right foot, or whichever foot you had extended, forward, maybe placing it on the outside of your right hand, if you'd like a little bit more space, or you could place it on the inside of your right hand if you'd like to be tucked in a little bit closer. And here it might be helpful to have our blocks handy. And blocks are really great for being an extension of our own body. So it extends our arms or our hands to reach the floor, or it brings the floor to us. And they can create stability and a sense of being secure and held. So if you'd like to work with them, you can. An option here to stay in this low lunge, perhaps simply observing what it feels like to be right here. Another option is to pair your breath with movement as we shift between a low lunge, maybe even releasing into it, allowing the hips to come forward towards the earth. And then as you exhale, you could begin to lengthen through the front leg, perhaps even allowing your toes to come up off of the mat. And again, you could find stillness right here. This is a half splits. And you could find stillness, or you could find this rocking motion, breathing in, exhaling out. Whatever you choose, stillness or movement, you are free to decide what you want to do with your body. No one else gets to choose that for you. This is your body, your practice. Option to continue being wherever you are for the next 2 to 3 rounds of breath. And as you choose movement or stillness, you might even ask yourself, what would it be like? What could it feel like to love my body? You don't have to force yourself to love your body if that doesn't feel true for you right now. But can we ask the question, what might it feel like? How would I care for my body? And the next time that you are in a low in a low lunge, if you feel complete here, you might begin to bring your foot that is forward back. And here, I offer a shape that we haven't explored before, and that is to extend the leg that you just had forward in low lunge. So if you just had your right foot forward, you could extend it right back again, back behind you. And bringing your knee that's connected to the floor to the center of the mat. And you could allow your foot to open up toward the side. So what that looks like is I have my right foot back. And so I brought my left knee that's connected to the floor in toward the center of my mat, right? Right underneath me. So then I'm going to take my left foot and begin to swing it like it's a door open toward the right. So I came here to here. And then the right knee, my right knee, I'm going to bring in kind of at an angle toward the back of my left knee as my right foot swings out to the opposite side. So we're kind of creating a V pattern. And you might need to adjust the flesh and the muscles of your quads. And if so, you could kind of angle it around, feel your way into it. And if this shape does not feel supportive to you, you do not have to do it. You don't have to do anything that doesn't feel right to you and your body. But if you would like to join me for this shape, this is an alternative cow face pose, cow face shape, also known as Gomukhasana. You might begin to rock back and rock forward. Taking your time. You decide how far you move in this shape. You decide if you move at all. Another option, if you don't want to rock and you'd like to find stillness, you could just extend the hips back, extend through the arms, finding this alternative version here. Pausing in stillness, maybe even bringing a block underneath your head. So you decide if you even want to be in this shape. Do you want to rock back and forth? Or do you want to send the hips back and kind of pause here? And wherever you're at, option to be here for another 3 rounds of breath. third option is to sit the hips all the way back towards the floor. Maybe leaning into it this way or coming up onto the fingertips. And this option might feel like a really big stretch in your body. And this is not any better than the previous options. Okay? There is no better or worse. It's simply what feels supportive in this moment. How can we move from a place of love for our bodies? As we finish up our last round of breath here, you might decide to stay here longer. If this is feeling welcome, if you're enjoying this exploration on this side, or if you're ready to lift the head and come back up to tabletop, you could extend your back leg, taking any movements here that feel welcome, maybe rolling out through the ankles. And we'll prepare to find the same sequence on the other side. And you might begin to extend out through your opposite leg. If you had your right leg extended last time, you'll switch over to your left. And here you could begin to find a rocking motion if you want. Perhaps tuning into whichever foot you have connected to the floor. Noticing if you can feel a stretch through the toes and the sole of your foot as you rock. And with your next inhale, option 2, draw your extended leg forward, perhaps placing it to the outside of your hand, or maybe toward the edge of your mat. Maybe you utilize your blocks here. Option 1 is to stay right here, enjoying this low lunge. Focusing in on where you feel the expansion or sensation in your body. Or if you'd prefer movement, you might begin to rock the hips back, lengthening through your front leg, perhaps even allowing the toes to lift up off of the mat as the heel stays connected. Maybe you continue to explore here. Or perhaps you work with your breath, inhaling for one shape, exhaling for the other. I invite you to be here in whatever you've chosen for the next 3 rounds of breath. May I move from a place of reverence and sacred sight, recognizing my body as home. Beginning to find completion if you are ready to. And the next time you are in a low lunge, you could begin to send the foot that is planted forward, sending it back. Coming into a tabletop. And the leg that you just tapped forward in a low lunge, you could extend it back again. If you'd like to take the cow face shape on this side. So I'm extending my left foot back. And my right knee that's connected to the floor is coming in at center. So I'm moving it in right to center, right underneath me. And my right foot is swinging over to the left like a door. And my left knee is coming at an angle right back behind my right knee as my left foot swings open toward the right side. Adjusting here as needed. And option one, again, you could begin to rock. Maybe rocking in and out. You could choose to pause in stillness. Maybe the hips stay lifted. Maybe you bring a block underneath your forehead. Another option is to sit the hips back. You might need to adjust flesh here. Might need to adjust your muscles. Perhaps coming into a seated shape. And again, none of these options are better or more advanced, quote unquote, than the others. It is simply what feels right to you in your body at this moment. And what feels supportive to you on one side might not feel supportive on the other side. And that's okay. The two sides of our bodies are not twins, as my teacher says. They are siblings. So we can't expect them to look and act exactly the same way. I invite you to be here for 3 more rounds of breath. This is a very deep hip opening shape. And so if you notice that there are emotions coming up for you, I invite you to take your time here. Or if it feels overwhelming, you can leave the shape at any time. You do not have to stay somewhere that feels like it's too much or that maybe it's overwhelming. You can choose to leave at any time. If you are ready to leave this shape, you could begin to unravel your legs, perhaps stretching through in any way that feels welcome. And we'll begin to find our way down onto our stomachs. And so I welcome you to find a time of rest here. We're going to go through some breathing first and then the time of rest. So if you need any props or to adjust anything here before we get into that shape, you might explore that. And here I invite you to have a second blanket over the top of you. So here's what it could look like. I'm inviting us to lay down on our stomachs. So I'll move my blanket so you could see how I'm laying. And here, you might decide to maybe rest your forehead on your arms, or you could choose to have maybe your cheek turned to one side. Maybe your arms are out to the side here, or maybe they're even tucked in close to the sides of your body, resting underneath the blanket. So whatever feels right to you, I invite you to find this shape now. And if lying on your stomach does not feel safe, you don't have to do it. You might choose to lie on your back or lie on your side, or you might always decide to sit up or take any other shape that does feel safe. This rest is deeply personal, and only you can decide, only you know what feels restful to you. And so before we move into our time of quiet rest, I welcome you to bring your mind to the inhales and exhales as they move in and out of your body. You don't have to do anything to change your breath. Simply breathing in your own natural way. Allowing your mind, your awareness to rest right here in your breath. And if you are lying with your stomach down on the floor or mat, perhaps you notice that as you breathe in, the front of your body presses into the floor, feeling this feedback here, the support from what's beneath you. And as you exhale, you might notice a softening. Perhaps you continue to watch your breath move in and out. Observing how it feels. Observing how the floor or the mat beneath you rising up to meet your body also receives your breath. Feeling nice and supported and snug here. And as you breathe, for these last few moments before we move into our quiet time of rest, I will read over you the poem that we read at the beginning of class. A love note to my body. First of all, I want to say thank you for the heart you kept beating even when it was broken. For every answer you gave me in my gut. For loving me back even when I didn't know how to love you. For every time you recovered when I pushed you past our limits. For today. For waking up. If you have your head turned to one side, cheek resting on the earth, you might explore turning it in the opposite direction to stretch the opposite side of your neck. And I invite you to be in this time of rest for the next 3 minutes. And I'll be quiet now, but just know that I'm here with you. And know that during this time of rest, there's nothing that you need to do or accomplish. Simply resting is enough. You might decide to stay here in this rest time for as long as you want. Or if you feel complete here and you'd like to start adding some movement back into your body, you might explore rolling onto one side, resting there in the fetal shape for a moment. Taking as much time here as you want. Before pressing yourself up. And maybe coming into a seated shape, maybe even wrapping the blanket around you. And you might decide to bring your hands to heart center or leave them resting wherever they are. And before we take our collective breath to end our practice, I invite you to continue moving from a place of love even after this practice, to explore what that could look like. May you move from a place of reverence and sacred sight, seeing your body as home. And with that, if you'd like to join me for one collective breath, I invite you to exhale your air out. And we'll breathe in together. My hope for you is that you feel safe, connected, and at home in your body. Thank you for joining me.